Good day, everyone. You're welcome to this topic. Today, we're going to be talking about environmental ethics and values. That is, we want to understand human responsibility towards the environment. Um, I mean, we all know that the environment is both living and non-living things around us. We know what our values are, the things that we consider to be worthwhile, that we consider to be worth something. And ethics is, generally speaking, the idea between what is right and what is wrong. But let's go into the topic. Let's see what we find in it. Environmental ethics studies moral relationships between humans and the environment. It guides how we should treat nature. That's basically the idea behind it. And as educators, we have a major role to play in how our children develop. The type of attitudes they develop, the type of mindset they develop towards the environment. So let's look at some key concepts. We have ethics, that is moral principles. What what is right? What is the right thing to do under these circumstances? What is the wrong thing? We have belief about what is important and what may not be so important. Uh, Under environmental ethics, we have questions. This is the field where we ask questions. Do humans have the right to exploit the environment, nature? Do plants and animals, do they have rights? How is it? What is the proper way to treat? How should we treat animals? How should we treat plants? And at the in the subconscious or at the tail end of all these questions is the idea that we're all living in an ecosystem. We need the environment. We can't live outside the environment. We need the environment, and we need it to be sustainable. We don't want a situation where all of a sudden we render the earth uh, unlivable. This helps us to determine whether activities such as these questions. I mean, the questions as to do we have the right to exploit nature the way we do? Do animals and plants have rights? This helps us to determine whether activities such as deforestation, for example, pollution, overuse of resources, are they right or are they wrong? Those are the type of questions that answer. And ethics, ethics, moral principles that guide our behavior. These are moral principles that guide our behavior. But what do we mean? Moral principles that guide our behavior. For example, in another field, careers and counseling, you come to me for counseling. You tell me what your deepest problems are, personal things, personal information. Or let's even look at it this way: you come to school, and in the process where you are asked while you are filling your forms to give us details about your medical history, to give us details about your family, and so many pieces of information that you give while registering. Do I have the right to go and use that information to the advantage of? I mean, who even has the right to the information? But do I have the right to use that information anyhow? Maybe I just come to class and I start using you as an example because I now have privileged information as a function of my position. Those are some of those are ethical issues, right or wrong things to do under different circumstances. In this case, we are looking at it vis-a-vis the environment. That is, how what is the right way to treat the environment? What is the wrong way to treat the environment? Pollution, overuse of resources. You cut all the trees in the forest, and then what? Which trees? And yet, those of, I mean, the study of the environment indicates that we are all interrelated ecosystems. We talked about ecosystems in the last, in the last. I think I talked about ecosystems in the last video I made. So values, on the other hand, are beliefs about what is important and what is worthwhile. I said that earlier on. What is important to us is generally when you say that person has certain values, it means those things are important to him. They are worthwhile. If our children these days, if their body is of value to them, then they will have a way of treating it. If nature is of value to us because we know why it is important that the world remains habitable. Then, of course, those are some of the key concepts that we are going to be playing around with when we talk about ethics, values, beliefs, about the environment. Let's go on from there to, of course, the environment is the natural world around us, living and non-living things around us. Those are, we have forests, rivers, plants, animals, wind, air. Those are the things around us. That's what we call the environment. Of course, in an earlier video, we talked about what the environment is. Okay, so what are the different types of environmental ethics? That is, what are the different fields? Well, how do people consider the environment? And we have here, I'm going to be discussing just three main ones. We have anthropocentrism, we have biocentrism, and we have ecocentrism. This, as you can see on the slide, human-centered, that's anthropocentrism. Biocentrism is life-centered, and then the ecocentrism is ecosystem-centered. In anthropocentrism, it sees humans as the most important and values nature mainly for its usefulness to people. If it's not useful to nature, you can do away without it. If it's only animals that eat that plant, we don't care. Well, as long as it's human, yes, then yeah, that's human centered. We have the biocentrism. This view believes all living things, plants and animals, have value and deserve moral consideration. That is, we have to consider whether we want to, what is right and what is wrong, what is the wrong way to, to interact with the environment. That's biocentrism. Ecocentrism, this is broader, a bit broader. It values the entire ecosystem, including non-living elements like rivers and soil, not just the living things. And as educators, it is important to expose students to all these different perspectives and encourage a balanced, way of thinking about the environment. We, we expose them to all these different types of environment ethics, things that, why it is important, issues of why it is important for this particular aspect of the ecosystem to be in a certain state so that it continues to allow the ecosystem to exist. How does this affect life? How does this affect the human being? So all these different aspects of environmental ethics are things that our students need to be exposed to again, so that they can have a balanced way of thinking about the environment. Um, Environmental values. What are environmental values? We have the aesthetic value. Of course, I assume, you know, that we all know what aesthetic values are, and of course, that's determine these different values determine how we treat nature. So aesthetic value is an appreciation for the nature's beauty, these landscapes, beautiful green wildlife, the different animals, how the sounds, the sound of the water, the sound of waves, just for its beauty. And for those who can feel, know that when you go into nature and you see nature in its splendor, it has a calming effect. You will see the beauty in the different colors of nature. Anyway, so the environment, these are the different types of values of the environment. We have the aesthetic value, we have the economic value, that's the usefulness of natural resources for human livelihood. There is where you find those who have been digging oil, those who have been cutting trees in the forest, you know, and then we have the moral value. Moral value is the belief that nature deserves respect and protection. We also have the cultural values, the traditions and beliefs tied to environments, such as sacred forests or rivers. You find those in certain parts of the world. Find that in certain parts of the world, even in biblical times, certain types of rivers and co were believed to have, healing properties. And in India, I believe very recently there was a major. I think they have a river there, and at a certain period, they do go into that river and believe that we believe that it has certain, their culture anyway. So we also have animals that are considered sacred in some parts, and while some of us are, we consider them meat, food. So definitely, so there are so many different values, and different peoples have been known to value the environment for different reasons. Some for its aesthetic value, some for its economic value, some for its moral value, and some for cultural reasons. Cultural reasons. What are the importance? What is the importance of environmental ethics? Why is it important to do the right thing in the environment? One is it promotes sustainability. It ensures that resources are available for future generations. That's basically what we're talking about. To ensure that the resources, the earth is livable for future generations. That biodiversity is not completely destroyed. That we will still have the different species still exists, and of course for the different values, for its economic value, for its aesthetic value. Imagine if there's no green, that everywhere is just brown, or even the brown has its beauty. The waters, the ice, summer, all the seasons have their beauty. But imagine if there was all those things were gone, even if it is just for the beauty of it. So the reason why it is important for us to do right by the environment is to promote sustainability. It encourages the conservation of biodiversity and ecosystems, uh, and it guides policy decisions. These are some of the reasons why it is important to study, uh, you know, the environment. It helps to guide policies and decision making, especially in areas like climate change, waste management, and urban development. Without ethical guidance, environmental degradation becomes inevitable. Without, you know, thinking about the ethics, what is right, what is wrong, as it relates to the environment, we will just destroy it. If everybody just goes there and say, let me cut all the trees there, I can sell the wood, and it goes ahead, the other one cuts it for firewood. Before you know it, all the biodiversity, different animals that live in that area will begin to move around. The beauty will be lost, and I mean, generally speaking, it's not, and it won't be able to sustain life. After some time, by the time, just like the animals are leaving certain places because of human encroachment, urban development, and all that. By the time a particular soil becomes, we can't plant and get any decent harvest from it. Human beings will need to begin to move to different places, and after some time, if we destroy the whole earth, of course, our future generations will have no place to stay. Already, the earth is becoming hotter. Certain species are already getting lost. The ozone, the icebergs in certain parts of the world have melted, increasing the water. The water is going up, increasing the rain. The rain is flooding a lot of places, washing off complete, villages. And so, all these, the knowledge of all this, the knowledge of what to do, and that will guide policy decisions. Oh, you people cannot build here, you cannot move here, you should not fish here, you can only fish at certain times, so that the fishes will not just deplete all. Just generally speaking, it is for sustainability. Um, Application in education. Why is it important? Why are these things, all these things that we're talking about, why are they important in education? Well, as educators, you play a key role in these things. You teach your students how to develop. It is in your purview to teach students to develop positive environmental attitudes, to encourage eco-friendly behaviors like recycling, tree planting, and the like. You know, and you know, and how do you do this? You integrate environmental topics into different subjects. Use real life examples to make learning, practical. And that's not so difficult. I mean, so many subjects and examples from the environment that can be used uh, for our teaching. In conclusion, protecting the environment is an existential issue. When I say existential issue, I mean I mean, it's actually determines whether we continue to exist on this planet or not. And it's a moral responsibility that as educators, we understand that we have a role to play so that the generations coming behind us will care for and protect the environment. When I say we have a role to play in shaping their attitudes, in shaping their behaviors, in teaching them about the environment, the importance of the different aspects of it, the values that they really should hold there, and so on and so forth. That brings me to the end of this topic. I think it's a bit short, but I hope that the essence of it is not lost. That you understand what are the different types of values, ethical values, moral values. Why is it important for sustainability? What is your role? What role do you play? How can you play that role? Those are some of the thoughts that I want you to take away from this lesson, this lecture. Thank you very much for listening.